All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And hello, we're all excited. Today's a very big day on our show. You're damn straight. It is the start of Mark's Madness, everybody. You love it, you need it, you want it, you can't get enough of it. And it is here, finally. The wait is over. Brackets are filled out. Drops go up against each other. There's no handicapping this perfectly. It's not easy. A lot of new drops are in. And for the first time ever, and good morning, Elwin, first into the super chat with a $5 super chat. What up, Elwin?
Big shout out.
Good morning, everyone. He said, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Yeah. It's great to have everybody in the mix. And Albert joins us from Taiwan.
Albert, thank you.
Man, that is look at you. Albert really cleans up for the Taiwanese, if I can just say that.
Albert, thank you.
Albert, you really look good all the time, but you look like sick good right now for the Taiwanese, buddy. They get the best of you, and I'm excited that you are here to kick off Mark's Madness, Albert. Now, is there anything that we need to know before we begin? First of all, please, Commish, I ask you, how is Taiwan? How long have you been there?
I think I've only been here for like 12 hours. I just flew in. I basically got an Uber ride straight to the hotel. I landed in the evening, so it's been nighttime. But the hotel is really nice. The area, from what I've seen, is pretty nice, and can't wait to get drunk here. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
It's nice to know that regardless of the country, Albert's agenda items don't change.
Albert, thank you.
They really don't. He's on vacation or business, asks Gil. I think that's a little bit of a personal question, but you can take it if you'd like, Commish.
It's very personal. Yeah, personal. Vacation. Yeah.
Vacation. Commish, before we begin formally Mark's Madness, share the view from the window, Edwards. And he may not have a view from the window. Do you have a view from the window? It's
still dark out. It's 2 a.m. So.
Oh, it's 2 a.m., Edward. Yeah, there you go. I mean, he's really, this is extraordinary.
There's a 7-Eleven outside. The 7-Elevens here are great in Asia. They have full-on meals, and anything you could ever want is at 7-Eleven here. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, Albert looks ready for a night on the town. I agree, Jim. Yeah, Jim says in the chat, you look sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
is it a late night? Is it a late night scene there?
I don't know, but I know that the night markets are plentiful and everywhere, and that's what I look forward to. Just going around, eating the good foods, and like I said, enjoying a couple of drinks. So
I love it.
What can you tell us about the scene?
And the night markets are pretty great, Larry. The scene at the night markets.
What can you tell us about the scene?
Walter says Taiwan on in Taiwan, Albert. Yeah, well done, though, with the wordplay.
Mark's Madness.
It's Mark's Madness, and this is, Commish, your first offering. It will be this.
Good day, sir.
Versus this.
We have processes and protocols and standards.
That's right. You'll vote for only one. It's either
good day, sir,
or it's
we have processes and protocols and standards.
Vote in the live chat and in the community section after the show airs, or in the regular comments, and good luck! Oh my God, Albert, I'm excited. I can't remember the last time I was, maybe the second impeachment hearing I was this excited. That's apart from that, I really can't recall ever having been as jazzed about something as I am.
I'm very excited too, and I'm like I said, I'm calling in from Taiwan, and I'll be also calling in for those of you who are going to the live meetup. I will be calling in during that time too. So
yes, the live meetup is tomorrow evening, and Albert will be jumping on in there for a while. We're full, and we're excited, and we have a real cavalcade of stars, to use the 70s term that was oftentimes used when there was a cavalcade of stars. And is it cavalcade? I think it's cavalcade. Anyway, Albert, I'm sure it's a ding word. Appreciate you being here. I'll let you go to sleep. I do want to say that this is just for Marks Madness, and I'm kind of keeping you here to make sure that I have this right. That is the first hour, Good Day, Sir, versus Processes and Protocols. The second hour will have two different drops going up against each other. Isn't that right, Commish? So each day there'll be first hour, two drops go up against each other. Second hour, two drops go up against each other.
That's correct. And then after that, you feel free to vote in the comment section. So I will be counting those as well. But I think since Tony's there for me today, we will be tracking the live vote for the first 2 hours for two different matchups. So
okay, so
I'm looking forward to seeing. Yeah, there'll be 4 drops a day until the end.
You'll track live vote, and there they are. Good Day, Sir is crushing right now, Processes and Protocols, but it's still very early. You know, we have just 2% of the precincts in. The deal with
we need our version of Steve Kornacki breaking down the precincts.
You are our version of Steve Kornacki. It's funny you say that. But the deal is, Albert, again,
Albert, thank
just
you.
to remind everybody, you vote live for those, but most people aren't watching or listening live. So those who want to vote after the fact, after the show has aired live, you just go to the community section, right? Or to the comments, to the basic YouTube comments section under the main show, under the live show, and just vote for those that you want to move on. When do you cut off the voting, sir?
Sometime around midnight, and that'll be easier for me out here. So
great. So at midnight, the voting is done. Albert, go
thank
to the
you.
night market, have fun, have a cocktail, and so appreciate you being here. The commish, everybody. See you, Albert. I'm loving it. The commish with an international...
The Mark Thompson Show.
International appearance. I find it exhilarating to have that kind of participation on the show. Thank you for being here. Smash the like button if you would. We've got the full crew. Kim is here.
Kim, how are
and
you?
So is Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
And there's a lot to get to today. Let me just mention something very special that's going down. This is if you have your Mark Thompson Show hymnals out, I want you to note that the Thursday visitor, normally on Thursdays, David Katz, the former federal prosecutor, now working the defense side of the table, he will join us today. And the reason for that is that he has an important case underway, and he has to be in court involved in that case tomorrow. So he will, his clients come first, of course. And so he will be on with us today. The other thing you should keep in mind is you'll have quite the hour, really. You'll have John Rothmann on politics, pure politics. We'll cover a lot of stuff, and we'll touch on the third-party candidacy of RFK Jr. and the entrance into the potential VEEP list of Aaron Rodgers. I'll have some thoughts on that before I even turn it over to Rothmann. And then you'll have David Katz. And then finally, it's the Planet Stoop and Belinda Waymouth on her new day. So you got to be able to rock it. And we are really on an action-packed Wednesday. I'm looking at the number of people in our Marks Madness, and it's a lot of people. And I'm excited that, these are really tough to call. I think even this first one's tough to call. Although Good Day, Sir is leading Processes and Protocols. Again, we are voting for either a Good Day, Sir, or...
We have Processes and Protocols and Standards.
Only one will move on to the next round. And so we're looking forward to the results. And then next hour, I don't know how you... Now, understand something. And then we will move on from this. But in this first hour, Good Day, Sir is the number 1 seed. Good Day, Sir won last year, Marks Madness. So it's the number 1 seed. It's the top seed. It's going up against the 32nd seed, Processes and Protocols. So you'd expect that Good Day, Sir would crush it. In the second hour, and it may or may not happen, but I'm just saying that's what your expectation would be. In the second hour, it's Sayonara Sucker versus We'll Do It Live. And that is the 17 seed, Sayonara Sucker, against the 16th seed. So that's really close. I don't even know how to handicap that. In fact, Kim always says Sayonara Sucker, so I always felt like that's probably going to win. But last night, Courtney and I were talking about it, and Courtney was doing her bracket, and she doesn't think that it's going to win. And I said, well, but Kim says it a lot, even when it's not a drop. And she said, I just don't know. So she actually got me to change my bracket based on that conversation. Anyway, that showdown is next hour. It's fun. It's exciting. And dare I say, it's exhilarating. All right.
What he's got going here is a situation.
Situation is another one that I'm watching as well. So
The Mark Thompson Show.
That's later in the tournament. You have Law and Disorder ready, Tony? I will speak before Law and Disorder about something that is extraordinary to me. And we'll get to the testimony from the special counsel before Congress, her testimony that was supposed to, in essence, be the nail in the Biden coffin about his inability to follow what's going on. He can't remember anything. Essentially, his diminished memory, his diminished mental acuity. And as it turns out, her left out a bunch of stuff. He left out a bunch of things about Biden that he even complimented the former president, the president on. In honor of my last radiation treatment today, Dillette is saying I'll be cancer-free. Yay, wow. And donating $50 to the show. Big shout out. And I'm not going to cry.
I'm not gonna cry.
But Dillette, I would almost cry over that. That is super cool. We are so very, very happy for you.
Wonderful. Mm-hmm.
And Dillette, I believe, is in our meetup, Kim. So you
Awesome.
can, I think that's right, tomorrow night. So
Awesome.
Also in the meetup, I'll just mention it because Dillette will be there along with Spencer Christian will be in the meetup. So will John Rothmann, Jim Avila, Josh Mankiewicz. A lot of fun people be Michael Schur. A lot of fun people will be through. Belinda will be through. Michael Snyder, the Culture Blaster. So a lot of regulars who you don't get a chance to talk to on the show will be there to kind of speak openly off the show. So that'll be pretty cool. We'll get back to her testimony with. We get this every year. We'll get to her testimony with Rothman. Trevor Starr in Hollywood asking this in the chat, Kim. Is it too late to do a bracket? We get this
Trust
every
me,
year.
Trevor, I was with you. Absolutely.
It's sad, but when the race starts, you can't say, hey, is it too late to enter the race? Yeah, I don't know if you've seen, but the runners are down there now. So sadly, you can. The great thing about Mark's Madness is, though, you can still be part of it. You don't have to have a bracket.
Play along, right?
Yeah, you can vote. You're in fact, you're important. So everybody watching and listening, you are important in the vote. You'll decide which drop goes on to the next round. So please be part of that, even though you don't have a bracket. Luis, they will all he's in the super chat. With a $5 super chat, he says they will all fail to chit, the drop of destiny for 2024.
Chit.
Go chit. I had chit going all the way also. But I now think it could be knocked out at the very last moment at the end. Rampage Radio SF. How about a super sticker?
Big shout out.
Wow, it's a big super sticker day. I love that. We're crowdfunded, so appreciate all the love. Thank you, Rampage. Rampage Radio SF. Right on. We started Mark's Madness on KGO, and so we decided to keep it going here. Miguel Ponder, how about a $20 super chat? Is that a super sticker?
I think it's a chat.
I love that, Miguel. I like the avatar, too. Big super sticker. Is 99 cents.
Big shout out.
And the super, look, the important thing is that they're both super. Isn't
Yes.
do you agree with me on that, everybody? I mean, one super sticker and one super chat, and it all goes to the show. Thank you for the 20. Miguel Ponder, big shout out.
Big shout out.
All right. Now, let me just quickly comment on this.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This insanity regarding Aaron Rodgers. I say insanity because this is what American politics has devolved to. It's devolved to the idea that if you can talk smack on a podcast, which is essentially what Aaron Rodgers does, right? He goes on Joe Rogan, or he goes on, who's the podcaster that he's on with all the time? The former punter, Pat McAfee. He goes on McAfee's show on ESPN, and he talks smack. He talks smack to Jimmy Kimmel. He actually, I think, attempts to defame Jimmy Kimmel, suggesting some connection between Kimmel and Epstein. It was outrageous. He's a loose cannon. He, I think, is ill-informed and poorly informed on any number of issues. But he has star celebrity status, and this is where the devolution of American politics comes into play. If you've got a name that everybody knows, if you say controversial things, if you have hot takes, all of a sudden you are relevant. And now your anti-vaxxerness is the thing that bonds you to RFK Jr., and you're on a short list to be vice president of the United States. Being in charge of the United States requires more than knowing how to throw the outlet pass, or even more than knowing something about the health and wellness associated with recovering from an Achilles tendon rupture. Yet, what could be in it for Aaron Rodgers to be even in this conversation? I think it's pretty easy. All of a sudden, this quarterback, who by any yardstick is an amazing athlete, I mean, a terrific athlete, Hall of Fame caliber athlete, all of a sudden he's facing the end of his career. He had this amazing deal at the Jets, and then, of course, it's over after about 3 minutes because he rips his Achilles tendon in the first game of the season. And the Achilles tendon injury robs him of the glory he might have seen were he playing for the Jets for the entire season. Instead, he plays for them for 3 minutes, and it's over. And then people revisit him. How's your recovery coming, etc. And I think there's a part of Aaron Rodgers that frankly wants to be in the limelight. And I don't blame him for that. I mean, the damnable part of Aaron Rodgers is that he feels he can opine on any number of things that he really does not have deep knowledge on. And then the damnable part of our society and culture is that we can somehow revere him because he's high profile. But he's high profile not for knowledge or administrative abilities. He's high profile for being able to quarterback a football team to great heights, to win a Super Bowl. Great. That doesn't qualify you in any way to be in the running for any sort of position of high altitude administration, vice president being one of them. Now, I should also say this. It doesn't disqualify you. In other words, the fact that he's an outstanding athlete, in my view, you know me, I'll take a meeting. Let's see what he knows. Let's see how he comes down on any number of issues affecting this country. Great. Maybe he is worthy of being on that short list. Based on what he said on McAfee's show, on Rogan's show, etc., I don't think so. I think he's got hot takes and he just kind of shoots from the hip in a bad way, recklessly. So, again, two things at play here. The sad aspect of our culture that elevates people who have some profile, regardless of where they got it, in this case, on the gridiron, to these positions of potential power. And then the sad part of Aaron Rodgers for wanting to be, at the end of his career, still relevant. That's what he's looking for. Relevance beyond the football field. He'll have that. He's in the national conversation. But this is a pathetic reflection of where we are in this country, that this is even in any way taken seriously by a supposedly third-party candidate that is a serious candidate. RFK Jr. does have some chops. Now, he might have his own issues, and he might be, wacky on any number of things that you feel him wacky on. But one thing I can tell you is he does some reading on the research. He does some reading on geopolitics. He does some reading on environmental issues. He is not completely talking out of his butt. I'm not so sure that's true with Aaron Rodgers. I think that Aaron Rodgers, on most issues involving this country and the world, that's pretty much the only place he's talking out of.
Isn't Aaron Rodgers the guy who tried to lie and say he was immunized against COVID and led everybody astray?
Right.
So, I mean, I guess we don't need to have trustworthy politicians anymore. It's okay to lie. Lying's fine.
He'll fit right in.
If you lie, you're part of the part of the regime. This is great.
There you go. That's a word about Aaron Rodgers. Maybe Rothmann will have more on that. So.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, he has relevance now beyond his football career. I don't know if I have time now, Tony. Do I have time for some law and disorder? What do you think?
Got 5 minutes.
All right.
Thanks, Tony.
Let's do it. Here's some law and disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
This may come as no surprise to you. The man who sent a bomb threat to Arizona election officials has been jailed. He's getting 42 months of prison time. James Clark is his name. He's 38 years old. He gets prison time and 3 years on probation. The judge says that he inflicted trauma on government employees. He's from Massachusetts, and he threatened to blow up the Secretary of State of Arizona in 2021. This was one of the most severe federal punishments that's been handed down for the wave of violent threats against election officials. That whole thing was unleashed by the Trump stolen election lie. He was sentenced in a federal district court in Phoenix yesterday to 42 months, to be followed by 3 years on probation. The judge saying that the online bomb threat had inflicted, quote, emotional and psychological trauma on government employees and required a deterrent sentence to protect democracy. I say bravo to that. You know, it's interesting to me, just as an aside, that the Republican Party can call itself conservative. And as you know, I'm not a big fan of mainstream institutional politics. And I think I'd love to talk to Rothmann about this. This would be a fun debate, maybe not today, but for another time. I'm not always a supporter of, well, you know, this two-party system is working so well. I don't know that it is, but I'll tell you, just to get back to the main strand, one party, the GOP, which now is completely in the thrall of Donald Trump, so I don't even know what they are now, but they maintain that they're conservative. Normally, when you're conservative, you protect the institutions of this country. So when you come to election officials, it's interesting to me that the GOP unleashes all of these rebels, essentially, with death threats, with threats of violence, intimidation. They literally are talking about intimidating poll workers. That's a conservative party? I would think you'd protect those institutions to which you supposedly suggested conservatism around. Anyway, this guy's going away, and he deserves to go away.
Yeah.
The former Honduran president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, found guilty in a U.S. drug trafficking case. He served as president of Honduras from 2014 to 2022. Charged by U.S. authorities with drug trafficking and weapons offenses that linked him to tons of cocaine that was imported into the States over the last 2 decades.
He sounds fun.
Girl, you just woo.
Prosecutors said that he accepted bribes from El Chapo's Sinaloa cartel and other drug networks to line his own pockets. Well, if you're going to line pockets, you may as well line your own. He also was financing his political campaigns and committing electoral fraud to win 2 presidential elections. That is the hat trick, though, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Line your own pockets, finance your political campaigns, and commit electoral fraud to win 2 presidential elections. That is the hat trick. Bravo. He protected drug traffickers, including his own brother, Tony Hernandez, who was convicted of drug trafficking in 2019, sentenced to life in prison in this country. And he even presented himself as a partner of the United States on crime, drugs, and immigration policies as U.S. law enforcement secretly investigated him over involvement in the drug trade. This is a pretty big takedown.
Yep.
He was indicted and arrested in February of 2022, just 3 weeks after leaving office, and then extradited to the U.S. months later. And this, in the area of disorder, in law and disorder. I've been sitting on this for a while, Kim.
Uh-oh.
And I've been wanting to get it in, and I haven't had a chance to get it in because of the the rapid fire nature of this show. Some of the people who attended the near record cold Kansas City Chiefs playoff game had to undergo amputations after suffering frostbite. Research Medical Center didn't give the exact numbers, but said that it had treated dozens of people who had experienced frostbite during this 11-day cold snap in January. 12 of those people, including some who were at the January 13th game, had to undergo amputations involving mostly fingers and toes. And the hospital said that more surgeries are expected over the next 2 to 4 weeks as injuries evolve and they realize, we have to amputate.
Those are some hardcore fans.
You know who's doing the amputations, too? The lead surgeon is Emil Schaffhausen. The third. The temperature for the Dolphins-Chiefs wildcard game was -4 degrees Fahrenheit.
Do you think they should have games when it's that cold? Or
no.
I mean, maybe people are like, yeah, we're badass. But maybe it's the responsibility of the NFL to say, you know what? We can't put people at risk. We need you to keep your digits, so we're going to cancel this one.
Well, I think that the idea is not so much the cancellation of the game, but there has to be some way to reevaluate these cold weather situations. And by the way, maybe you're right. Maybe it does have to be the cancellation of the game, a postponement of the game. I can't cancel it, but I do want to know how that would affect my betting action.
Kim, how are you?
If that did happen. I would just say that you're right. This is a record for the coldest game in Arrowhead Stadium history. And again, to our European...
I wish it were colder. Look at that sign.
I know, really. That's the whole idea, is in your face, kind of what you were saying. Hey, man, no big deal. I shake it off.
Right.
But...
I got your Taylor Swift reference there. Nice.
Yeah, shake it off. Yeah. Oh, thank you. I did. Yeah. That was inadvertent, but I like it. Yeah. There used to be bragging rights around this. Green Bay, Kansas City to some degree. You really found it in Minnesota. They used to play those games outdoors in Minnesota, but now they play in a domed stadium, and there may have to be some modifications or some consideration. Right now, I think the NFL is just ignoring this, but this is a really big deal. And as I was going to say, for European viewers, we have a few. It was -20 Celsius and -33 Celsius with the wind chill. That was the coldest game in that's ever been recorded in Arrowhead Stadium history. So pretty crazy, dangerously cold wind chills. They'll have to do something. That's a view of the courts, of the prisons, and the football fields. And that's Law and Disorder.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
It is a pleasure to have you here. We've got a really cool show. Croquet Film. What up, Croquet Film? Big shout out.
Big shout out.
A 5-spot and all hail Albert in the super chat. Yeah, Albert, to check in from Taiwan is pretty cool, Kim. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, it does kind of put him at the top of the heap on the staff list, doesn't it? I mean, somebody's showing dedication today.
He is
how
pretty
it can
cool.
compete with that.
Yeah, well, it's not a competition. Not a competition, Kim.
Fly somewhere else and show up on the show.
Yeah, I think, show your dedication every day on this show. Don't you worry about that. This is not a competition. But if it were, Albert would be the winner. That's all I'm saying. Yeah,
Albert, thank you.
Yeah, all right.
Well deserved.
Smash the like
Smash
button.
it with your iron
like
rod.
a boss. Smash it with your iron rod or anything handy. We will talk to John Rothmann next, and we'll get into some deep politics. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Quite the day at San Francisco International Airport. Yeah, the international terminal has been shut down by a large group of pro-Palestinian protesters. Video shows cars blocking the entrance ramps outside, and then inside, you can see here, hundreds of people blocking gates as well. Elevators and escalators also blocked inside of SFO's international terminal. They're calling for a ceasefire, these protesters, in Gaza, and for the United States to stop sending aid to Israel. So again, the international terminal at San Francisco International Airport affected by this. It has been shut down by this protest. Again, this is at SFO. About 100 million American TikTok users might have to find something else to occupy their time. Yeah, that's because the House has passed a bill that could ban the Chinese-owned TikTok in the United States. Lawmakers are concerned the Chinese government can access the personal data of millions of Americans. Opponents are arguing this type of a ban violates free speech. So, to TikTok or not to TikTok? Apparently, that would be the question today.
Well, I mean, they're not wrong. I mean, this is a really interesting question, and I'm not sure that there's a simple answer here. The Chinese government is involved in TikTok, and because they're involved in all kinds of big businesses there. It's a communist country, right?
Right.
So the idea somehow that this ByteDance, which is the company, the Chinese internet company, should still be a part of TikTok has to be a problem for those who watch technology from China coming into this world of the West. Yeah. I see a defensible argument for forcing ByteDance to step away, to essentially sell off its part of TikTok. I don't know. We may want to do a deep dive into this, as this evolves. I think it is an evolving story. It's weird because it's so very popular, as you say. But they could take TikTok into an IPO. That's one of the things they're talking about. Like in other words, they have ways to divest but still participate. Maybe, I don't know. They may just get rid of the part of TikTok that is involved in the U.S. That's another way they could go, you know, selling just the U.S. app. But that would in itself be a problem because there are algorithms that play into all of that. And it's a very complicated question. In other words, there are TikTok algorithms that are affected by that. So anyway, interesting.
On to former President Trump. 6 charges against Trump and other defendants in the Georgia election interference case are being dismissed. Georgia Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee dismissing charges of solicitation of violation of oath by a public officer, leaving, though, the rest of the 41-count indictment intact. McAfee is the same judge who will soon decide if the Fulton County DA Fonnie Willis stays on the case. Attorneys for a Boeing whistleblower whose death over the weekend was ruled that it was a self-inflicted gunshot want the police now to do further investigation. 62-year-old John Barnett, pictured here, was found dead outside of a Charleston, South Carolina hotel. In a statement, his attorney said they didn't see any indication that he would take his own life, and they would like to know more.
Absolutely. This guy did not commit suicide. That's an outrage. And by the way,
and he had just finished testifying.
Yes,
or he was still providing testimony.
He goes through all that trouble, and he's still involved in this case. Please. This is a contract killing. This is brutal what's happening in this country. And if you want to see something right now, and I think it's trending on Netflix, and we're going to be talking about it with Courtney next week in the True Crime Corner, see this Octopus Murders. It's a 4-parter, and it involves politics. It's a documentary. It involves politics. It goes back to the Reagan administration, Iran-Contra, and it's just this kind of thing. It's this something claimed to be a suicide when it's obviously not. And in that case, it was a journalist. I recommend it highly, and you'll see how flawed we are, and how we talk about Russia and the fenestration, that they throw these guys out windows there or they poison them. The reality is, in this country, we do it too, and it's scary.
Yeah. The first thought that I had when his body was found, just days after he was giving information to investigators, was there's something hinky here. So I can see why his lawyers wanted investigated. Well, the advertising seems to have worked, because Democratic Representative Adam Schiff is no longer the leader in the race to become California's next senator. Oops, worked a little too well. At latest count, baseball great and Republican Steve Garvey has inched ahead in the primary voting, a lead of just under 5,000 votes, with apparently it looks like 85% of ballots counted in the state of California. Both are running to fill the seat of the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. So we'll
ask Rothman about that, but that's Garvey in the lead.
That's not fake. That's real.
Yeah, apparently.
It turns out the number of women who own guns is on the rise. Might be due to a change in advertising by gun manufacturers. Oregon State University analyzed advertisements from gun manufacturers and found they began using a new approach in 2013. The ad showed female gun owners were confident, empowered, and feminine. After 2016, the ad focused even more on competence. They depict armed women as responsible, capable, and well-trained. In 2022, about 22% of women own guns. That's up 5% since 2007. So more of us are using weapons. And I'm going to wrap this up so we can get to John Rothmann. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It is not, however, sponsored by guns. There you go. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com is where you can get a little bit of heaven in your Mark Thompson Show coffee cup. They have a huge selection of coffees and teas, and they even have little tea bags that have no plastic on them, no metal on them. I really love it.
They have loose tea leaves. They have the other kind of, every kind of I love Coachella. It's a boutique-y spot. It's the best coffee I've ever tasted, and there are all kinds of different beans, dark beans, lighter brews, et cetera. You can have at it. There they are, tea filter bags.
Yeah. It's a way to do something a little fancy for yourself, I think. At not a large cost. Because, the bags of tea, $10, $11, and they last a really long time. So I'm a fan, and I thank them for supporting the Mark Thompson Show. Find them at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. And if you enter something into your cart, make sure at the end to put in Mark T at checkout to get your exclusive Mark Thompson Show 10% off.
Do it, kids.
Yeah, I'm Kim McAllister. This is the Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Right on, everybody. Excited to welcome our guest. But before I do, I've got to update it.
Mark's Madness.
We're in the middle of Mark's Madness. It is the first round, the opening round, and you have to vote for one or the other. Either
Good day, sir.
Either good day, sir, or
we have processes and protocols and standards.
Again, it'll either be
Good day, sir.
Or
we have processes and protocols and standards.
Only one moves on to the next round. You vote right now. You can see Good Day, Sir, edging out processes and protocols. Two more in the next hour as we continue with Mark's Madness. I'm so excited. You can barely contain the enthusiasm in this studio. How about it? It's doubly enthused because of John Rothmann, everyone. The great John Rothmann, who has agreed, John, you've agreed to join our meetup tomorrow night, which is really cool.
I want you to know I'm going to be at my wife's conference. She's retiring from her business, and I told her at 8 o'clock, no matter what we're doing, I'm going to appear on the Mark Thompson get-together, and I'm so excited to have a chance to chat with our listeners. Yeah,
it'll really be off the air and really exciting. So I want to get right into it. Will you give me a thought on this third-party candidacy of RFK Jr. and the addition, and I guess it's just another way to get into the zeitgeist for the news cycle of the day. They bring in Aaron Rodgers on his short list of VEEP.
Aaron Rodgers for vice president. Nothing has sounded as silly since Curtis LeMay ran with George Wallace. I mean, how do you become a serious, creditable candidate for president and suggest this person for vice president? It's crazy.
Yeah. Now to the testimony yesterday, the Robert Hur testimony, which was full of, this is the mishandling of the classified documents case, just obviously people I think are aware of this, but so Biden's mishandling of the classified documents, Robert Hur was a special counsel. He decided there be no charges levied against Joe Biden, but he, in summary, essentially suggested that Biden couldn't remember a lot of things, like the when his son died, et cetera, when transcripts essentially reflected that Biden very well recalled those things.
Yeah, don't confuse people with the facts. The people who want to get Joe Biden are going to use everything they can. I think Mr. Hur made a serious error in judgment, but as he admitted on the stand, he is a Republican, he is a partisan. It's okay. The American people understand it. I don't think, aside from Republicans, that the Hur report will have any difference at all.
Well, let me just push back a little bit on the general notion that this was a hit job. Now, I think he...
No, I didn't say it was a hit job. Sorry. I didn't say it was a hit job. And if you read the report, which I have tried to do, I haven't read everything, but I've read a good part of it, Joe Biden comes out looking pretty good. So
yeah, well, he actually says, Hur does, to Biden, he says, wow, you have a photographic memory for so many of these things. So he actually pays the president a compliment in the conversation. It's right there in the transcript. That's never noted in the summary, of course.
No, of course not.
But when I say push back, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say push back on you. There's a narrative out there that it was a hit job. And I think in part, there is some truth to the fact, as we just said, that you know, this guy wrote a partisan report. He cherry-picked facts. He left other stuff out. But he didn't charge Biden with anything. I think that has kind of been lost in the conversation. If it were really a hit job, there would have been charges.
Look, you're absolutely right. It's a sad commentary, and we're just going to have to move on. The attacks on Joe Biden, and by the way, when he was asked directly, Mr. Hur, about whether Biden was senile, he said that's not what it says in the report. Joe Biden, you can criticize him for many things, but I watched that State of the Union, and he was with it. He was sharp. He responded, and his age can be held against him by people who want to hold age against someone. But are they going to hold it against Trump? Did you see Jerry Nadler played a series of clips of Donald Trump making serious errors in his commentary? This is going to be a down and dirty campaign. I'm an expert on American political campaigns for the presidency. I've reviewed so many aspects of those campaigns. Already, it's the dirtiest campaign we've ever had, and it's going to get a lot worse.
Now then to campaign-related things like the primaries, primary in Georgia, et cetera. Now you've got both of the main candidates for the respective parties having clinched nominations. I wonder if you can speak to what might have been revealed in those returns beyond the clinching of the candidates.
There are people who won't vote for Trump under any circumstances. His big problem, Trump's big problem, is that there are a core of people, I would say, and I'm guesstimating now, about 15 to 20% of Republicans who won't vote for him. He can't win the election without those Republicans. And every day he digs the hole even deeper with his repeated blasts at the president. So my sense is, and I still believe this, and we'll see if I'm right or wrong. I've been wrong before, I can assure you. I think President Biden or an alternative Democratic candidate will defeat Donald Trump under any circumstances.
I guess what I'm getting at with the question, too, John, is that Georgia was a key state. That's why he had that call to Georgia officials, Secretary of State and others, actually, to kind of strong-arm them with the 11,780 votes. I wonder if you can speak to Georgia specifically, because it's a narrow margin of victory here in so many of these swing states.
Take a look at the Georgia vote, Mark, and you can see that if Trump can't hold those Republicans in Georgia who insisted on not voting for Trump, he cannot carry Georgia.
And so this is interesting, too. I wonder if you think that this Middle East situation is affecting. I'm seeing in the chat now that, Gaza is a problem, et cetera. I don't know to what extent that gets onto Biden.
There's a backlash. Look, what's happening in Gaza is tragic, brought on by Hamas and its actions. But look, this morning at San Francisco International Airport, at the international terminal, there was a protest that shut down the international terminal by the pro-Palestinian forces. And look what happened at Zellerbach Auditorium in Berkeley just the other day, where an Israeli speaker was shut down by pro-Palestinian protesters who proceeded to smash windows in Berkeley. There was a march yesterday against violence. I'm in favor of free speech. I have no problem with the Palestinians or the pro-Israeli forces speaking out. I think it's a good thing that people have that right to exercise their freedom of speech. But I'm opposed to violence by anybody on any side. And I think there is a backlash taking place. The backlash is that many people who are very sympathetic to the tragedy in the Middle East are now saying to Hamas and their supporters, you can't do it this way. And I think that's important. Look, Mark, the most stunning thing to me was after the Israelis made the argument that the UNRWA people, who were supposed to be there representing the UN on a humanitarian basis, what did they find? They found that the Hamas command headquarters was located underneath the UNRWA headquarters. And there are several nations who cut off their support to UNRWA because of that reason. But the issue really is, and I say this as a bottom line, the issue is, does Israel have a right to exist? And the Hamas forces say a two-state solution isn't what they want. They want the destruction of Israel. That isn't going to happen. And I can assure you that the Israelis are not going to roll over. They're going to fight back. And some of the tactics they use, as occurs in every war, including wars we, the United States, fight, are not pleasant. No one, and particularly I can say this as talking to friends in Israel, even people who are on the left, no one is happy with what has been wrought in Gaza. But again, you have to consider why. And October 7th should not be forgotten. It should be understood. By the way, we found out yesterday that another American died on October the 7th. We know that the Hamas could end all of this by simply releasing the hostages. The president really thought that for Ramadan, there would be some sort of a deal. Hamas refused. And that's the problem. It's not a rational discussion. Please understand me. It's not a rational discussion. It is an emotional discussion. But we'll see how it plays out.
Kim?
I had a question earlier from a listener, viewer, and it's a perfect question for you, John Rothmann, because now we know that President Biden and Trump are the presumptive nominees for their parties. Have we ever had a matchup of the same candidates twice in a row like this?
Yes, Eisenhower and Stevenson, 1952 and 56 is the last time.
Oh, come on with that.
I knew he'd know. That's right.
You want to play for the big money, or you want to go home with what we've already awarded you?
No, let me assure you, that's a softball kind of question. But let me remind everybody,
Rothmann smack talking. That's nothing. Come on, bring a real question to me.
Eisenhower defeated Stevenson by a large margin in 52, a larger margin in 56. And I think, and I say this not as a partisan, I've really tried to analyze numbers. I think Donald Trump is headed for a massive defeat. And that defeat is going to be in large measure because people who voted for him in the past won't vote for him now. And I think the Republican Party, the big question, Mark, which you and I will be talking about next year at this time, I believe, is how the Republican Party rebuilds. And let me point out to you that his only opponent, who just suspended her campaign, Nikki Haley, has made clear she's not sure who she's going to vote for. And that's a big blow to Donald Trump.
Again, I've been back and forth on not that it's a huge deal, but the Haley thing as to how she would, she's not going to support Biden. So it would be a question of whether she endorses anyone or she,
She will not run as a third-party candidate. She made clear to No Labels who intends to nominate someone. They haven't indicated who that will be yet. She has said she will not run. Joe Manchin has said he won't run. And I want to remind people, a third-party candidacy like a Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is critical only if you're on the ballot. And right now, Bobby Kennedy Jr. is on the ballot in 6 states. And frankly, I think the challenge for Joe Biden is to hold those Democrats. I think that Bobby Kennedy Jr. does more damage to Donald Trump. And we'll have to see how those numbers turn out. And you and I will be analyzing that all through November. But let me just point out, the desperation of the campaign is indicated by who he's considering for vice president. And let me assure you, that's how George Wallace went down in 68. He had about 20% of the vote. He took Curtis LeMay. LeMay spoke irrationally about the use of nuclear weapons, and that was the end of George Wallace's serious candidacy. Bobby Kennedy Jr. has to understand who is vice president matters, and he should understand that better than anybody, given his father's interaction with Lyndon Johnson.
Oh, wow. That's a great point, too. So this is an interesting comment. I don't know if I can read it. It is...
John Rothmann, about 497,000 people voted for Trump in Georgia. About 275,000 voted for Biden. How can the Democrat win in November?
The Dems take Georgia in November, yeah.
The answer is, don't judge how a primary, number of people who turn out for a primary. Primaries generally turn out lower numbers. What will matter is the general election. Remember, Biden was virtually unopposed in Georgia. There was no real motivation to go to the polls. But look, your listeners, who are extremely sharp, obviously, because they listen to you and me, we're going to be analyzing these numbers. I think Mark and I in September, October, into November are going to really be analyzing numbers. We're going to be analyzing polls. I don't know if our segments will be longer, but certainly they are going to be vital to understanding what's happening. Right now, if it's a head-to-head, I think that Biden wins. And I think the reason he wins is not because people love him overwhelmingly. It is because people don't want Trump. And the answer is people don't just vote for, they vote against. But we'll see. I've been wrong before, but I just don't think I'm wrong on this one.
I think increasingly, this is a really great point you make. Increasingly in this society, and I really see it on social media, anybody who is in this world that we're in now, YouTube, social media platforms,
TikTok.
X, whatever, TikTok. And I'll get to TikTok in a second from a policy standpoint. But you see how hate or dislike actually motivates and propels in a much more efficient way than does, now I kind of like that guy. No, I kind of don't like that guy or guy generically. That really motivates action far more than sort
Absolutely,
of just
100%. I was at a dinner party Friday night. I think maybe they're listening at this very moment with people who are big Trump supporters. And when I raised the question of January 6th, when I raised the dispute now going on between Mark Levin and Liz Cheney, when I raised all of these issues, it didn't matter. It didn't matter to them. And I think part of it, and I know I can get criticism for it, I believe the Trump supporters are part of a cult. They aren't thinking rationally or logically. And so,
well, let me say this in defense, in a weird defense, a perverted, crazy defense. Some are in a cult, no question about that. But there's
always been in this country 30 to 35% idiots.
Yes, that's true. But there's another part, probably the people who you circulate with, who are smart, but they are Trumpies for other reasons. They are Trumpies over court decisions. They're Trumpies over single issue stuff. Maybe it's the Middle East. So I see that they're not all just
they are
low information voters.
No, you're 100% correct. These are high information voters, but people are blinded by certain preconceived notions.
Sure.
I just defended Donald Trump on the question of in vitro fertilization. And I said, here I can agree with him. I believe he is right. A woman should have the right to in vitro fertilization, something I've talked about with Kim at some length. And I say this because you don't have to be wrong all the time, or even right all the time, but you have to have selective view of what you're doing. You want to talk about TikTok. I don't want the clock, if you'll pardon the pun, tick
to
down.
TikTok away. So let me ask you about this. You know, it's passing the House, this essentially the forced divestiture on the part of this ByteDance company from TikTok, the Chinese part of TikTok, the Chinese ownership. Where do you stand on this?
I'm opposed to what the House did today. I do not believe, and I've never believed in limiting freedom of expression, pure and simple. Now, let me explain to you. My kids listen to TikTok. I don't, but they give me all of the latest news from TikTok. TikTok is just another vehicle of social media. And I must say, very frankly and honestly, I'm not in favor of censoring Fox or CNN or MSNBC or Mark Thompson for that matter. I believe that you have to be able to make these distinctions. If the government really feels that the TikTok is a danger because of the Chinese Communist Party, then let's talk about it. Let's expose it and let President Biden talk with the Chinese about it. But I'm not in favor of banning anything. I've never been in favor of banning books. But I want to make a comment about something General Kelly said. General Kelly, who was White House Chief of Staff under Donald Trump, said that Trump said, well, you know, Hitler didn't do everything wrong. He did some things right. That should be an automatic disqualifier. And I want to commend to you, this is not a movie show, but go back and listen or watch Judgment at Nuremberg. And you will see an encounter that Spencer Tracy, playing a judge, has in a house which he is given during the trials. And there's a German couple there, and he asks them about the Hitler years. And he says to them, well, tell me. And the woman, the maid, says, well, you know, they did some things right. There were things they did that were right. And of course, from Spencer Tracy's point of view, from the American point of view, from humanity's point of view, whatever Hitler did was wrong in every sense. Now, let me explain to you that if Donald Trump can really say, as General Kelly has said, and by the way, this is not the first time we've heard that Hitler did some things right. And then one of Trump's aides is quoted as saying, well, don't cite Hitler, cite Mussolini. I'm thinking to myself, what have we come to? Any candidate for president who speaks that kind of language has no business near the White House, which is, by the way, the argument being made by many of Donald Trump's aides. They're saying they wouldn't work for him again, and that's the end of it. And may I quickly say about Mark Levin, because understand, these are influential people. I listen to Mark Levin on KSFO, and I listen occasionally to his television program on the weekend. Mark Levin is a powerful spokesman for a particular point of view. And I want to be clear, when he said that Liz Cheney distorted things, had not been forthcoming, suggesting that in fact Donald Trump had called out the National Guard on January 6th, we know that isn't true. And if you want to read a book that I believe stands the test of the ages, Liz Cheney's book, Oath and Honor, is one that I would recommend and in fact require.
Yeah, I've actually heard really good things about it as well.
It's an amazing book. Yeah. An amazing book.
And I'm not a Liz Cheney fan. I'm
not a Liz Cheney fan either.
Cheney
I'm
bandwagon.
not, listen, I would never vote for her, but I have to tell you, she fulfills the courage denomination of a Profiles in Courage award. So
let me, Tony, I have to ask you because I can't see. Is Katz waiting, or do I have enough time for another question with Rothmann?
We have time. No Katz yet.
Okay, so
thanks, Tony.
Let me ask you this because I want to go back to your Nazi reference. So, and this ties into TikTok. So you're telling me that if the Nazi Party had a hugely popular social media platform like TikTok, you'd be okay with it?
Yes.
If it's no, wait a minute. But it's owned by an outside.
Yes.
Okay. In this case, it's the Chinese. In this case, it's the Chinese Communist Party that is involved with ByteDance. Okay. Yep. That's the suggestion. So in my example, it's the Nazi Party that's owned by, and then you can fill in the blank. Some country that's not a NATO ally. You know,
Absolutely.
Fill in whatever. Russia, maybe, if you want.
Google Holocaust denial. You'll get it all. Google Protocols of the Elders of Zion. You'll get it all. You want to see Jew hatred unvarnished? Go online. I don't believe in censorship. I believe in rebuttal. And I say it again. The greatest tragedy for us is not having a talk radio station where you and I can do this for 3 hours, talk with our listeners.
Agreed. This is not about what is said. This is about data that is mined by the communist regime, it's argued. And so the Chinese Communist Party, begins to have a bunch of information on Americans, data points, if you will, that they didn't have before. It's nothing to do with, now, you hear a lot about what they're, just like Facebook, exactly right. You hear a lot about what's out there. Well, they're feeding all of this stuff. The feed that comes to Americans isn't the same feed as China, which is true, but it's the data that becomes a security concern.
You can't stop data. Look, you want to do a data analysis of your program, Mark, and who's listening? You can do it on my podcast, which now has 150,000 downloads. I can just rubbing it in.
Congratulations!
But I couldn't do it without you. I want you to know that.
Yeah.
But I want people to be aware. That's the kind of world we live in. You want to read a book about it? Read 1984 by George Orwell. We're there. It's here. And that's the reality. Does it scare me? You bet. May I tell you a quick story? So my wife is retiring, and I wrote a beautiful tribute to my wife. And I must say, all due modesty, really spectacular. She, at my suggestion, went to artificial intelligence. And I said, Ellen, do me a favor, put in Herb Cain, as if Herb Cain were writing it. Now, let me tell you something. Herb was an old friend of mine. He was a guest at our home many times. I knew him. I was in his column. Just a great guy.
Yeah, he's a very famous, just for those who don't know San Francisco, very famous San Francisco columnist in San Francisco.
The artificial intelligence did a better job of writing a tribute to my wife than I did. Now, I say this respectfully, but the world is changing. There will be a time, Mark, when what we do will be superfluous because it'll all be done by artificial intelligence. I'm scared of that time, but I think part of what we have to do with TikTok is we have to be aware that the future is here, that this is a reality, that we're going to learn to live with it, and we're going to have to deal with it. So if you're going to ban TikTok, you better ban Facebook, you better ban all the other stuff that comes out, because everybody's mining it, everybody's using it, and that's the problem. But it's also
the quick follow-up I would give you is that attitude will allow the total engulfing of everyone who's on any of these platforms by these companies unfettered, and they will mine data, and that's not cool. So those if you think Facebook and Google deserve to be completely unregulated and just, as I say, engulf us all, I think that ain't cool.
Let me assure you, I didn't say that. I said we have to figure out methods to expose what these companies do. I don't believe.
I think we need to have censorship methods to regulate these companies too. Do you not agree with that?
Well, it depends what you mean by regulation and who's doing the regulating. If Donald Trump were president of the United States, he said he would weaponize the Justice Department. It depends on who's doing it. But we have to be aware. Let me tell you, the abysmal lack of awareness of the American people. When I talk about Donald Trump and we talk about 91 criminal charges against him, I don't know anybody who can recite all 91. Nobody can deal with the cases. It's too much. It's too overwhelming. And that's the problem we face now. I'm terribly concerned about TikTok and artificial intelligence in general. But thank God we can talk about it. And we need to do more talking and more thinking.
Around the Political World with John Rothmann is his podcast. You can find him there daily with a dose of what you've just gotten, political analysis. There it is on screen.
May I say, I am looking forward to joining you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Many of you were not able to qualify for this very limited, exclusive group of people, but you can still support the Mark Thompson program. And I urge you to do it, as I urge you to support Nikki Maduro's program and Kim McAllister. It is so important because the vehicles for expression, which we are talking about now, require these kinds of platforms. By the way, Mark, I wasn't able on Monday to do my podcast because everything went down. I was unable to get it up. It's the first time that has happened. But I can assure you that's one of the other issues that we are all going to be dealing with. And in the meantime, to Mark Thompson, I'll see you tomorrow night, 8 o'clock.
I love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Love you, John Rothmann. Thanks, John. Bye-bye.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Rothmann always has it. He always finishes with he sticks the landing with a big plug all the time, which is really nice. You can take that John Rothmann banner probably off right now. We are on Code Blue. We are in a situation where we are in the middle of Mark's Madness. And there it is. Good day, sir. The end of our live poll. Our live poll's only up for an hour, but you can continue to vote in the comments and also in the community section. If you go to our channel, the Mark Thompson Show channel, one of the choices is community. And there's a live, video, shorts, community is there. If you go under community, there, isn't that how it works, Tony? There's a continuing poll there, I believe.
Yes.
Isn't that right? I believe that's correct.
The off-hours poll there.
Yeah, so, you're not...
you can hear me?
Okay, off-hours poll is there. Yeah. Before we get to David Katz, which I'm excited about...
Now, I can't believe it! Mark's Madness!
We have hour 2 of Mark's Madness as this continues. It is either this that you vote for.
Sayonara, sucker.
Or...
We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
That's right. Either...
Sayonara, sucker.
Or...
We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Sayonara, sucker, or we'll do it live. Only one will move on. You vote now in the chat and after hours in the places I told you. And good luck! Wow. I'm very excited about this, as you can tell. I'm
The Mark Thompson Show.
Guy who's excited about Mark's Madness. It's always fun. I did my bracket late last night with Courtney. There are a bunch of people who've done brackets, but even if you didn't do a bracket, you're still able to participate. That's the beauty of it. You vote for the drop that makes it on to the next round. I believe that we'll be joined in just a moment by David Katz, the brilliant legal analyst, the former federal prosecutor, and now he's working the defense side of the table. You've heard him on London radio. You've seen him on Fox 5 in New York, on Fox News Channel, on CBS TV in Los Angeles, on KTVU in San Francisco, on KCBS. Okay, you get the idea. Here he is, David Katz, everybody.
Great to be with you. How are you today?
We're so well, David, on your special day that normally it would be a Thursday, but we're so glad you could be with us today on this Wednesday. I wonder what you took away from the Robert Hur testimony on the Biden document case.
I just wanted to say it's great to be with your Wednesday audience. Normally I'm on Thursday at noon. So for people who are just part of the Wednesday audience and would like to see us on Thursday, I'd love to have you join us on my regular day, Thursday at noon.
Very well said. Yeah.
The Robert Hur, I mean, I think he's an opportunist. I do think that it was gratuitous for him to phrase things the way that he did. I think that he knew that it was going to cause an uproar. I think that he was in a delicate situation from his own political point of view, that I'm sure he wants to be a federal judge or a high Justice Department official if Trump wins again. And he really did disappoint the Trump followers, because at the end of the day, he didn't charge Biden with anything. I mean, that's the bottom line. He didn't charge him with anything. He has an awful lot of power. If you think about it, they were dreaming that Biden would be, chased around with criminal charges in the same way that Trump has been in 4 different cases, and they could argue this equivalency, right, Mark? And he didn't do that. So this was about the only bone that he gave the MAGA crowd. Which was that he wasn't going to charge Biden because Biden had these memory problems. Now, one of the things that Hur did, which wasn't very smart for what seems like a smart guy, was he said at one point in the transcript to Biden that, you have just about a photographic memory. And he didn't put that into the written report. And he could have figured out that they were going to contrast the written report, Mark, right, with the transcript. And that makes it look like, he's cherry picking. And Adam Schiff had a great moment where he said to him, are you really so naive that you didn't think that this was going to create a firestorm? And the answer, of course, is that, a lot of that's theater both ways, because, of course, he's not naive. But as I said, he had his own political calculation. And I think Hur found Hur's line where he keeps his political future viable with the MAGA and Trump crowd, given that he didn't really give them what they wanted. He didn't give them, Mark, an indictment of Biden.
Thank you. That's exactly the point I was making earlier, which is this: if this was really a political hit job all the way, they would have had an indictment down. I mean, but I also think he, and you make this point just now so well, he kind of split the baby. He gave them a little something, right? He smeared Biden in the summary, but then didn't actually bring charges.
Someone called it clear and smear. And, from the point of view of the prosecutors, it's not, his choice was not outlandish. It's not outlandish to explain. We have had these long reports. We had Mueller's report. We had Starr's report. They would say that one of their obligations, Mark, is to furnish a report. And in the report, he has to say why he thought it would be a difficult jury case. Again, he said it in a more colorful and I think derogatory way toward President Biden than he needed to say it. But certainly it's a fair consideration when you prosecute somebody. Are they going to be very sympathetic in front of the jury for one reason or another? And that is part of the calculation of whether you can convict them in front of a jury beyond a reasonable doubt or not. So, people have pointed this out. This is nothing new for me, but these are sound bites. Everybody got their little sound bite. And he got to say her in answer to a not very cleverly put question. I did not exonerate Biden. And you can expect that in the ads in the run up to the election. I did not exonerate Biden. And then you're going to have people saying that it was really a hit job. And when you compare it to Trump, look at how great Biden looks compared to Trump. Here's someone who really did inadvertently take things except his own personal notes. And they pointed out that President Reagan took his personal notes and no one even made an issue about it. So all Biden really knowingly, willfully took was his personal notes. This other stuff got loaded on there. It wasn't, people are loading stuff. They're taking them here, they're taking them there. That was not Trump's situation at all. Trump willingly, knowingly took them. Now we have the Butler did it. We have this fellow Butler who's come forward. He used to be number 5, witness number 5. Now he says exactly how, while Trump is telling them documents, what documents? I don't see any documents around this place. That's because the documents have been spirited away hours before.
Literally, as the FBI was there coming, they were moving them out. Now that, just because you mentioned him, I thought he was quite credible as sort of an unwitting accomplice to what was going on. Loyal accomplice, without question. But I mean, his accomplice-ness was completely, it seemed, not associated with knowing exactly what he was doing.
Well, he didn't load things on with those red and gold top secret things just, flying out or being affixed to the side of the boxes. So, he's someone who's putting boxes on there. And then later on, he figures out from the whole situation that he was unknowingly part of this, scam, of this conspiracy, of this obstruction of justice. So he's a critical witness. And that's not all that Trump did, of course. He took all of these highly sensitive documents. He showed them off to people. He showed them off to someone who was writing a biography of somebody, a ghostwriter. This is what Trump did. And then, he moved them around, kind of played a shell game with them to try to fool even his own lawyers. That's the allegation. That's why they found the crime fraud exception applied. That's why the lawyer was forced to testify in front of the grand jury and explain how he'd really been used as a pawn in Trump's corrupt game. And then he had someone else certify that there were no documents there that were top secret, and there were documents there that were top secret. She needed to go get herself a criminal defense attorney after getting close to Trump and doing the bidding of Trump. And then on top of that, they eventually showed up there with all of these statements and declarations that there was nothing there, and an awful lot was there, and it was top secret, and it was in the bathrooms, and it was in the ballrooms, and it was scattered all over the place. So Trump really has no defense on that. And you've said this before on your show, Mark, that it's really a pity that that case didn't get filed in Washington, D.C., where there was perfectly proper venue. The special prosecutor took a 1 in 3 chance that he would get Judge Cannon down there. He did get Judge Cannon down there. And there's just no way that looks like that case is going to go to trial before the election when it should have. It really should have, because it's not that complex a case. There's ways to deal with national security material. They know how to do this in Washington, D.C. The best that you could say about Judge Cannon down there is that she was completely inexperienced in how to do that. So things did take longer, but it just doesn't look like that case is going to get to trial before November does.
No, and it's, as I've said before, and as you've kind of just alluded to, the easiest to understand case. I mean, it's so straightforward and indefensible what was going on that I would have liked to have seen that come to pass, because these are legitimately, and you can say, well, we overclassified documents. I get it, but these documents, some of them are insanely sensitive, and he took them with him. So now I want to move on to Georgia. The judge in Georgia has gotten rid of 6 of the charges in the Georgia election case. He said that the general charges that Trump and his allies solicited public officials to break the law, those charges were not specific enough, but didn't touch the rest of the case.
Well, your Thursday listeners know that I've got the nickname Katzadamus, and I've had a real good string of predictions. So you may see, this is like, Pete Rose's hit streak. This may be the end of the hit streak, but I'm going to predict that Fani Willis is not going to be removed by the judge in that case. And I think that this decision is kind of consistent with that. I think if he were going to remove Fani Willis, he'd realize there'd be so much delay in the case. Why make a big deal over this order, right? And so I think that this is consistent with him basically saying, this case is going to go forward, the only way it can go forward anytime soon is if he keeps Fani Willis and her office on the case. And I think this is the way of saying, because this is amendable, this is curable. They can just go back to the grand jury and have these charges made more specific. Basically, the 6 charges that he's dismissing, Mark, are that it's perfectly fine to charge someone the way that they were charged. It's not just Trump, it's Giuliani, it's Meadows that benefited, at least for the short term, from this motion. They're having counts against them dismissed. But the counts can be cured by going back to the grand jury and saying, look, our theory is not only that these defendants violated the Constitution, violated statutes, but they did it in this particular way. The way it's written right now, it's very vague. The government, state, could end up showing that these defendants violated those 6 laws, that they were, guilty of those 6 counts, all kinds of different ways. In the federal courts, we would deal with what's called a bill of particulars. We would say, make the government explain exactly how they're going to prove these particular counts. Apparently, the way it's done in Georgia, the government now has 3 options. 1, they can just try the case without those 6. They can appeal it, which might cause more delay. Probably the defendants would love it if the state, Willis, appealed it. Or they can go back to the grand jury and just amend those counts, and that's probably what they'll do.
So you've already anticipated my question, and that was the answer. So with the forecasting essentially how the case would proceed. There is a phenomenon, you've talked about it before. It's this judge shopping. And maybe you can review again how judge shopping influences both judgments and charging, and how the federal judiciary is affected by this. I wonder if you could now speak to an effort to try to get rid of this phenomenon of judge shopping.
The federal judges are doing something about litigants going to federal judge shop. So this is not the Congress is doing something. This is not Biden or the administration's trying to do something. This is the judges kind of cleaning up their own house. And they have a right to do this. And I think what they're doing here is very smart. There are 2 ways that you can judge shop. You can take a case. First of all, the country is divided into 94 districts, each one called a district court. So for instance, Los Angeles is the central district because San Diego gets to be the southern district. People always think that maybe we're in Modesto, but no, we're the central district because we're between San Francisco in the north and we're between San Diego in the south. So we're the central district. Now, there are also 3 divisions. So there's a division that sits in LA, there's a division in Orange County, there's a division in Riverside. At one point, Riverside only had 1 judge. And Amarillo, Texas, at some point only had 1 judge. And Fort Pierce, Florida, only had 1 judge. So what that meant was that if you filed your case in that division in Fort Pierce, you knew you were going to get canon. If you filed your case against the medical abortion pill, which more than 50%, I think it's up to now, are used for women who decide to end a pregnancy, you would get that judge in Amarillo. So they have gotten rid of that. And basically what they've said is that if you want a national injunction, or if you want widespread relief, which is what the judge in Amarillo originally did, you'll recall that he would have knocked that drug right off the market, except that got stayed, and so that didn't happen. So that drug is now available everywhere in the country still until the Supreme Court rules, and they're going to have that argument in about 3 or 4 weeks, I think, Mark. But anyway, so you can't play that game unless you want. If you're injured in an accident near Amarillo and you have federal jurisdiction, you can still go to Amarillo. And if you have something happen to you in the area of Fort Pierce, even though there's only one Judge Cannon there, you can go to her. But if you want relief that's like widespread or nationwide, your case goes on a wheel. It goes at random to some judge in the district, not in that division. So you file in Fort Pierce and you want national relief, they throw you into a pool. You could get a judge in Miami, you could get a judge in Fort Lauderdale. You have one chance in, let's say, 25 of getting Cannon. Same thing in Amarillo. But again, if you just want relief because something happened to you nearby, okay, you can still go to Amarillo. If you just want to talk about your, you have diversity jurisdiction over some, and you get into federal court that way because you had an accident near Amarillo, you can still go to the judge, because the argument is that these big states, long distances, you shouldn't have to drive 100 miles. If your case happened, east of Riverside, if it happened out in Needles or something, you shouldn't have to go all the way to LA, right? You should be able to go to Riverside for your case if it's just a Riverside case. Now, the other way that you can judge shop, though, and this is, I don't think that they did anything about this one, is these related cases. And the related case thing gets abused because once a judge, let's say down in San Diego, takes this view that California is violating Second Amendment rights in just about all of the gun legislation that we have, then you say, oh, well, my case is related. My case involves a similar challenge, and this judge down in San Diego knows all about it, and it's very judicially efficient. Of course, people think that these lawyers, these interest groups, are playing games, that they want to go to that particular judge. And it's not really related. They could file the case in LA, they could file it in San Francisco. Some other judge could learn all about this new statute that the state has passed. They don't want a new judge to learn about it. It's not really that efficient. What they really want to do, Mark, is judge shop. And they say it goes the other way too, that they also file, liberal causes, liberal interest groups. They try to file in federal court in Brooklyn or in the San Francisco Bay Area. But you can't quite play as much of the game of the little divisions. You can play that game of the little divisions, and the right has gotten to be very good, and the right-wing interest groups have gotten very good in finding their Amarillo, Texas judge and their judge. They found places where there's only one judge in that division. There's a lot of judges who sit out in Brooklyn. There's a lot of judges who sit in San Francisco and even in Oakland. So you can't play the game that much. It's good the Judicial Commission is doing something about it. And actually, Chief Justice Roberts deserves a little bit of a shout out because he has pushed them in that direction, because it is outrageous. From the right or the left, from any side you're on, suddenly there's a national injunction against the medical abortion pill issued by one judge who's been cherry-picked in Amarillo, Texas. So it's sort of a little bit inside baseball, but it can really matter.
No, I mean, it seems like it's super relevant, especially now. And as you say, the right is so good at it. Why is the right better at it, it would seem, than the libs? The libs don't seem to have caught up.
Well, because they have these. First of all, Trump got 4 years of appointing judges. And there are places like, Amarillo and Fort Pierce, which are divisions that only have one judge. You can play the game. I had the uncle of a female tennis player, and we could have gone anywhere around the country, right? Because we could have gone, and the person wasn't allowed because they had a problem with the tennis organization. They supposedly fixed a match or something. They weren't allowed to go to any match. This person was like the Pete Rose of tennis.
Sure.
So I could have filed it in Cincinnati. I could have filed it in New York. I could have filed it out in Brooklyn and Queens, because that's where the U.S. Open is in September. But it was very tempting to file it in Riverside because there was only one judge there who I thought was very fair and would really do a great job on the case. But, the judge that I thought would be very fair and do a great job on the case, that might not have been the opinion of the opposing attorney.
Sure.
Ultimately, my client decided not to pursue it. But by filing it at Indian Wells, right, in Riverside, there was only one judge there. So you can kind of play that division game, but the right has gotten to be really ruthless and very good at it. And even I think the U.S. Supreme Court and certainly Chief Justice Roberts have gotten tired of it because it makes a lot of work for them. The shadow docket that shows up, they have to deal with these injunctions. You look at the medical abortion pill, which I think ultimately they're going to basically say that the medical abortion pill is okay and the FDA didn't do anything wrong. But, just from their consumption of their time and the time of that circuit that sits over the Texas courts, it takes an awful lot of time for the federal courts. And, it's just and it shows it's a kind of disrespect for the judicial system. We should have a lot more respect, and the federal judiciary should work in a way that, people hold it in high esteem. And that's just one of those things that, inside baseball again, you don't hold it in high esteem when people are judge shopping and just running to some particular judge. The one in Amarillo, Texas, was sort of a Christian warrior, before he went on the bench. So he really has kind of an odor, and the federal courts should have, just paradise.
I mean, the odor goes all the way up to the Supreme Court. Perhaps it emanates from there for recently anyway. I am out of time with you, but I really want to just quickly touch for 60 seconds on what the former president has said. I hate to always get back to Trump, but there's a lot going on in the legal system right now. And he said that the court overseeing his hush money trial should know that he'll argue he didn't commit any wrongdoing because his lawyers were involved in the incident. This is the hush money paid to Stormy Daniels. The defense strategy will be that the president lacked the requisite intent to commit the conduct charged in this indictment because of his awareness that various lawyers were involved in the underlying conduct that has given rise to these charges. Can you speak to that?
If you get a ticket for crossing against the red light, okay, and you say, I'm relying on advice of counsel, it's because you told your lawyer all the facts, and your lawyer said, no, there's a special thing that you can cross on a red light in certain circumstances, and then this was the circumstance, so you were following the lawyer's advice. It's a 4-part test. And one of the problems, if you rely on advice of counsel, that's the total defense. You can be, if your lawyer really told you it was fine and it's a reputable lawyer and you told them all the facts, you don't have criminal intent. You weren't acting willfully at that point because you were acting in reliance on the advice of your counsel. Likewise, in tax cases, there's some reliance on the advice of an accountant if you really were following the accountant's advice in managing your affairs. Well, that's not what he wants to do. What he wants to say is, well, I was crossing along with Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen and I were both crossing against the red light. And I figured, well, the lawyer's doing it. It has some impact on, I figured it must be okay if the lawyer's doing it. And so that's what he wants to do, Mark. He wants to sort of have this, well, a lot of lawyers were doing it. And so I figured it couldn't be that bad because these lawyers were doing it. Were they going to risk their bar license? No. So it must be legal. It must be okay. Of course, the facts go, his motive, Mark, his main motive is that he doesn't want to have to turn over documents, because if you make a true advice of counsel defense, you have to give notice to the court, and then you have to comply with discovery obligations that you turn over all of those communications so the other side can say, no, you didn't tell the lawyer those facts. Look at the memo between you and the lawyer. You told the lawyer a BS story, and then the lawyer gave you advice, and you didn't follow the advice. So he doesn't want to have to turn over all of his internal documents. He doesn't want to comply with discovery. But the defense is idiotic anyway, because the lawyers weren't crossing the light with him. If anything, in this case, the lawyers were saying, don't cross. It's a red light. Don't cross. And Trump says things like, pay cash. Remember that Michael Cohen is wearing a body wire, and he says to him in the body wire, no, pay cash. Why does he want to pay Stormy Daniels cash? Why does he do all of these things? And Michael Cohen is corroborated up one side and down the other. And the fact that she's a porn star doesn't help him. It hurts him. It explains absolutely the motive for why he committed the crime, because it would have been very damaging if it had come out. And it shows why he was so eager to pay hush money and to hide it and to commit this campaign violation, which is what he's having the felony charges against him for. So it's the usual Trump thing. It's just throwing mud everywhere around. And it's sound and fury.
I did everything right and they indicted me.
Yeah, right.
Sound and fury signifying nothing, that motion was. No, that notice to the court was.
Find David Katz across the media landscape on television, as I say, on London radio, and here normally on Thursdays. Thank you for being here on this Wednesday this time. Love talking to you, David, and wish you the best. David Katz, everybody. Great stuff.
The Mark Thompson Show.
So we're running late, as you probably noticed, which is nothing extraordinary. We tend to run late from time to time because we're packing a show with a lot of good stuff. I will get to a fork in the road here as to what we're going to do from a content standpoint. But I will tell you this, Belinda Waymouth will be here with It's the Planet Stupid, and it is a full segment, so it will run long. I will warn our stations that we'll run a little over the top of the hour with Belinda Waymouth, so we'll probably lose Kim because she has to go do her show, the After Party Live. And I want to get an update on what's happening at SFO as well. But before I do,
Mark's Madness.
Look at Sayonara Sucker. It is really crushing right now.
Sayonara,
And this
sucker.
may be bad news for my bracket right out of the block.
Sayonara, sucker.
You vote for either Sayonara, sucker, or, well, what is the other one? We'll do it live, right?
We'll do it live.
Yeah.
I can write it and we'll do it live.
So it's either
Sayonara, sucker.
Sayonara, sucker.
We'll do it live. I can write it and we'll do it live.
One or the other. You vote now till the end of the show, and then after hours in the community section. It's so Courtney last night convinced me that We'll Do It Live, I think I was telling you this at the beginning, Kim, would beat Sayonara Sucker. And I actually invoked your name. I said, well, Kim says Sayonara Sucker all the time. I think that's going to do well. But so then I changed my whole bracket to accommodate Courtney. I blame Courtney on this.
I do too.
What? Yes,
Sayonara Sucker is so applicable in so many situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she thinks We'll Do It Live is funny, so she thought, oh, it's going to win. Anyway, looks like I'm going to get bounced in the first round. But you can still, miss something in the first round and still be alive in a lot of other ways. Yeah. So anyway, the voting continues, and that's the latest. Sayonara Sucker versus We'll Do It Live. In the first hour, it was Good Day, Sir versus Processes, Protocols, and Standards. And that you can still vote for in the community section or in the comments. But the live voting is over for that. Now, Kim, I know there's a lot going on. It's a very busy day today, and I appreciate that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
You're always so wonderfully flexible, and you're always good-natured about it. Tell me if you can first update the situation at SFO, the international terminal. I think it was really being affected. I don't know if they shut it down, but
they had to. It was definitely affected. So here's the latest at that. With that, protesters this morning took over San Francisco International Airport, demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. Here's what that sounded like. Yeah. It's the typical chanting, and there were hundreds of people inside of SFO, closing down the international terminal and affecting the drop-off and pickup at the airport as well. So what we know at this point, and here's how that looked in the international terminal, gates A and G were affected. This group called Critical Resistance arrived, about 300 people in front of gates A and G. Others marched in a circle on the road outside the airport. The whole situation affected the gates and the airport travel for about 3 hours this morning. By 11:20, the protesters started to march away. By 11:30, the security screening gates at the A and G checkpoints reopened for passengers, things getting back to normal at SFO right now. And then many protesters were seen headed to BART trains leaving the area.
Great. They're just leaving. I thought you meant there's going to be some protest on the BART train.
No, they're out. They were out an hour ago. So for the last hour, things have been okay. One more breaking story before we move on, and that is in the E. Jean Carroll case. Former President Trump's lawyers reached an agreement, apparently today, to delay an extended deadline in this case. So the agreement stipulates that Ms. Carroll's deadline for responding to Mr. Trump's motions are extended to March 26th, and then Trump is being given to April 9th to respond, so this case gets pushed out with the appeals even further.
Oh, my.
There's never been anything like this.
It sure is feeling that way. All right, good stuff, Kim. Thank you. Good luck at the after party if we don't speak again. We have a great segment with Belinda. It's The Planet Stupid. Smash the like button like a boss. Give us a thumbs up. It helps us in the YouTube universe. And then we have a big segment with It's The Planet Stupid. And then, as I say, we'll wrap up Mark's Madness for the day. So good things ahead.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet
Earth. A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet stupid.
And our guide for It's the Planet Stupid, Belinda Waymouth. Hello, Belinda.
Hi, good afternoon, Mark. How are you?
Well, now that you are with us.
Yes.
I count on you not only to give us news of the planet, but to mix in some of the grim news of the planet with some of the encouraging news of the planet. So I turn it over to you in hopes that you do have some encouragement today, as well as, I'm sure, a level of grimness.
Yeah, well, the grimness is for you, and then for everybody else, I will bring the uplifting, because that is my brand as an environmental communicator. I think it's so
true.
important.
I am a creature of darkness, and you bring the light. So go ahead.
Yeah, it's the yin and the yang, the yin and the yang. We're a perfect combo. Okay, so we have to talk about what this CEO of Exxon was saying last week, Darren Woods. I mean, this guy, to do an interview and turn around and tell the public of the world, the people of the world, that we're to blame for not transitioning to renewable energy it's so outrageous. I mean, you can't see it right now. If I didn't have the cans on, there'd be, steam coming out my ears. It's just insane. And, what the fossil fuel industry has done is, and the scientists at ExxonMobil, they knew back in the 70s that they were, putting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. They were heating up the planet. It was going to be bad. And what did they do? They started a whole campaign of, obfuscation. And they got scientists, they got people actually who weren't even scientists who went in and testified before Congress wearing white coats like they were scientists. And they, they got these think tanks, they spent all this money, and they changed the whole course of the dialogue. And
it might be worth just saying, just for people who, and we have it up on the screen, Darren Woods tells Fortune that consumers are not willing to pay for clean energy transition. I mean, I think your outrage, which because it's been boiling for a while, has outpaced, in this instance, just our ability to fill everybody in on exactly what was said, because they do sell it and package it, as you kind of hinted, in an extremely inventive and almost believable way, where you kind of go, oh yeah, I guess if I was just willing to pay for alternative energies and green energies, maybe we wouldn't be in the situation we're in. It's my fault as a consumer.
Yeah, but the thing is, Mark, that's ridiculous, because when he talks about, the people who generate the emissions should be made aware of it and should pay for it, he's actually talking about himself, because fossil fuel, companies are generating, a lot of the emissions before the fossil fuel gets to the pump and we put it into our gas tanks and burn it. A lot of emissions have already been created. So he's actually, one of those people who needs, should be aware of and should be paying the price. But the thing that has happened now is that Exxon has got these lawsuits all over the US. Cities and groups are taking fossil fuel companies to court. So now what they're doing is they're trying to get rid of any kind of responsibility and put it on us. And I thought what was pretty interesting, and the symmetry was pretty stark to me. 2 weeks ago, you and I were talking about what the other branch of the fossil fuel industry, the plastics, started doing in the 70s with their propaganda, and with, ionized Cody, the crying Indian, who was telling us that, people, start pollution, people can stop it. That was the same thing, so now we've got this, years and years, 50 years later, we've got the, Exxon head telling us what, Cody was telling us, is that we're to blame because we won't pay for more expensive fuel. And this is also a very egregious point, because in 2022, the fossil fuel industry worldwide gets subsidies worth $6 trillion plus a year. That went up to $7 trillion in 2022, because everyone was worried about, oil, and Russia had invaded the Ukraine, and what were we going to do with the oil and gas that we all need. And so the subsidies went up. Throw half of those subsidies at renewable energy, and let's see what the prices of renewable energy would be then, and alternative fuels. Hello, why not?
Of course, that's so true. And I'll just read the quote from him. And I love that you mentioned this is an embattled company, because right now they're being taken to court. So you have to understand all of these things in that context, because what they're trying to do is throw the legal stink. It's not just a public relations, the legal responsibility, I'll call it the legal stink, but we're talking about real culpability here, legal culpability onto others rather than the corporation that's being involved in court cases. So he says in a Fortune magazine interview, the dirty secret nobody talks about is how much all this is going to cost and who's willing to pay for it. He's talking about clean energy transitions. The people who are generating those emissions need to be aware of and pay the price for generating those emissions. That is ultimately how you solve the problem. And he says that the world was not on the path to cutting its planet heating emissions to net zero by 2050. And of course, that's what scientists say is imperative to avoiding these catastrophic impacts of global heating. When are people going to be willing to pay for carbon reduction? And he says, we have opportunities to make fuels with lower carbon in it, but people aren't willing to spend the money to do that.
But I just, if you finish.
No, that's it. I wanted people to actually hear his words, though.
Yeah, but that, Mark, I mean, I take, I mean, that's just ridiculous, because the fact is, as I just said, if fossil fuel, if the
fossil fuel's got the same subsidies that dirty fuel did, then
right. And to say that we're not on target, who do you think is responsible for us not being on target? It's fossil fuel companies that are absolutely, they want to get every single ounce, that they can drilled out of, the ground. And what we have been told by scientists for, more than a decade is we can't afford to take any more of that oil and gas out of the ground. It has to stay in there. And Exxon, of course, they've got these activist shareholders now, who are saying, we want you to transition, and the writing is on the wall. But I mean, and I know this is a bit of a pun, because what is oil and gas made of? It's made of dead dinosaurs. But these guys are the dinosaurs of the energy industry, and they are just holding on rather than embracing. I mean, they keep on saying, oh, we are going to go to renewables, blah blah blah, whatever. But the fact is, they have polluted the commons. They have polluted our atmosphere. They have caused all these health problems for human beings and other species on the planet, not just us. They know it. And what they are trying to do now is to say, we're not the responsible ones. It's you, because you use this energy, and then you won't pay for more expensive energy. Now, the fact is, move the subsidies over to the renewable energy. We've got the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, with a $380 billion, which is helping people, change to heat pumps, get rid of gas stoves, put in solar panels, all these things. But we're fighting this, billion-dollar industry. We're fighting an industry that doesn't want to give up and can feel the sort of the nails coming, being banged into their coffin, but they're determined to get every nickel and dime they can out of this industry. And we are not on target. No, we are not for what we need to do by 2050. But I'm not. You can't blame the public. It's them. It's like blaming a drug lord, or a drug lord blaming drug addicts and saying it's your fault. It's not me who supplies you with all of it. It's your fault because you take it. You know?
No, that's exactly right. And so when the Exxon chief says, we've waited too long to develop carbon-free technologies, we at Exxon have recognized the need to decarbonize, but you, the public, just won't go for those things because they're slightly more expensive, or they're much more expensive. The reality is that company, Exxon, lobbied against alternative energy incentives. They've lobbied actively to maintain the fuel structure that they have now. They have lobbied for heavy taxes on green energy. I mean, not only have they lobbied against the incentives, they've lobbied for disincentives to alternative fuels. This is a CEO who is really, speaking out of, I think with utter, it's utter fabrication and as you say, obfuscation, and it's the dirtiest lie, quite literally, that one could launch in this area.
Yeah, he's got oil, he's got black oil on his hands. I mean, this is just so, it's so egregious, and so you can see why activists and environmental scientists were just, hey, this is so. It's ridiculous. He sort of makes himself look ridiculous, but
yeah, I mean, to anybody who really looks beyond just the words in the interview and actually can do the arithmetic in even a rudimentary way, he does look ridiculous. And as you say, they took that money, that the Biden money, the incentivized investment in the alternative energy space. Exxon took that money, but that's not where their priority is. Their priority is in dirty fossil fuel. All right, so we've now cleanly established that this guy, Darren Woods, is a bad dude, and Exxon is a bad actor. They are.
Yeah, they totally are. And I mean, I really like that there are all these lawsuits now against Exxon and other fossil fuel companies to hold them responsible when they knowingly have polluted the atmosphere, our waterways. It just, it has to stop. And this is sort of like, it feels like the dying sort of gasps. I mean, not quite the dying gasps. I wish it did feel like it was more at the end, but it feels like, they're fighting with every ounce of their being to sort of keep, business as usual when everyone knows that it can't be business as usual.
And the last thing on this as we move on is just that I really want people to be aware that taking these companies to court is an answer. You may say, well, it doesn't, I mean, it seems to be off point to take these people to court. It doesn't really, no, sadly, you can see just by his responses, they recognize money, they recognize penalty, and these court processes are part of holding them to account financially. And honestly, sadly, it's the bottom line that matters most to them. So I think that is a way to have an effect on them. Absolutely. What else do you have?
Okay, so let's move on to a good news story in the environment. So we hear a lot about the elephants in Africa and how bad things are for them. So there is some good news out of the southern countries in Africa, from Tanzania south. There has been a stabilization in elephant populations, which is so amazing and fantastic to hear. So elephant populations in Southern Africa are back to 1995 numbers. So there are now just under 300,000 of them. Yeah. So 1995 numbers. And yeah, there they are. And so why is it so hard for elephants? Well, it's really hard, we know, because of poaching. Poaching is, absolutely huge. And there are, round efforts to try and stop the poaching of elephants and the poach, for their ivory. But another thing, and look, when you see the baby, I mean, you want these guys to survive. But the thing that they've done in these Southern African countries, which is, really smart, is that rather than having these fortresses, these sort of islands, which I'm going to show a national park like this, like it's a gated sort of community, basically, of animals, and they only live in that park. And that's a problem, because if resources get tight, because elephants need a lot of water. I think each elephant drinks 200 liters of water a day or something. I mean, it's a crazy amount of water. They forage. But if they run low on resources, they need an area outside of that park. If there is poaching or danger there, they need to be able to move. And so what they're doing is they're creating corridors between the national parks, and they're creating buffer zones. So you don't just have this, identified, area of demarcation that, they don't move out of. They're now creating these buffer zones, and then, natural corridors so the elephants can migrate when they need to. Yeah, you can see here. So you've got these bigger and bigger areas. So rather than living in little islands, like if you look up at the top at 10 and 11, you can see like that's a sort of a small area. But if you get down into the central part around number 3 and 2, you can see the interconnectedness of this. And the thing that's amazing about it is it doesn't just help the elephants, it helps all the other big species. So it helps, the water buffalo and zebra and lions, all of them benefit. And one of the things that's tough in the buffer zones, and one of the big things that elephants are up against, is there's a lot of human animal conflict, because populations are still growing in Africa. The rest of the world, human populations are sort of leveling out, but Zimbabwe still has I think it's a 1.5% population growth every year. So that creates this competition between the elephants and the humans who, want to live in the buffer zone because there's nowhere else for them to be. But the success of it and the fact that poaching is way down in Zimbabwe. They haven't had any poaching since 2019. They've been getting funding for vehicles, canine units. They use drones, and all of that is helping to, watch the elephants, keep the poachers at bay. And it's a good story for us because it shows us that conservation efforts work, and it gives us then that it is worth the effort and it is worth giving the $10 to, the Animal Wildlife Fund or whoever it is that you want to give your money to.
So great to hear that. And it's funny, I was just reading a story from Smithsonian today, actually, about how Asian elephants were engaging in the burial of 5 dead calves. These are very young elephants that were buried in irrigation ditches that were found by the other elephants, and they literally, and the creatures, the dead, I'll just call that they were burying, these Asian elephants that they were burying, showed signs of having been dragged miles by the herd to these special burial areas where they would be safe. They were located by the herd and then covered with soil. They were 26 inches deep, some of them, and they were between 3 months and a year old, and they died from natural causes. I can say I'm not happy with an elephant death at all, but wow, I mean, as you said, poaching is such a huge issue. And again, there was bruising on their back that suggested that the herd members had dragged their bodies over long distances to get to these special places. But the reason I mention it in this context is that these elephants traveled vast distances. They suggest maybe even 2 days with these dead calves on their backs to get them to this special place. And there's evidence that the entire herd of elephants, multiple elephants, participated in this ceremony, burial, whatever you want to call it. Clearly, it was a burial at minimum. And that others in the herd, then they know this from observers who were close to this area, but not close enough to disturb the elephants, that others from the herd came to the area. It's what we kind of talk about, that the elephant herd goes over the bones, et cetera, but sort of to pay their respects. And in this process, it reinforces the sentience of these creatures and the majestic nature of these creatures. I was so touched by the story, and I'm hoping that, villagers tell other villagers, tell the Smithsonian, their photos, and these Asian elephants, they, even as they contact people in less than positive ways, can find their way in this world that is less and less forgiving for them. I just feel these majestic creatures have been so mistreated around the world, and it's wonderful to read the evidence that their elevated conscience, if you will, plays out this way. I was really touched by the story.
They are absolutely amazing because, they will go back to that burial site. They make annual pilgrimages back to the burial sites or the places where they've left their dead. They mourn. I mean, they are beautiful, incredible animals who have this incredible emotional capacity and memory. They know where their dead are, and it means so much to them. I mean, I've watched documentaries about, there was one about this young elephant calf who was born and wasn't able to stand up properly. One of its legs had been bent, in the womb, and when it came out, and the mother, and it's one of its older sisters, was not going to give up on this calf. And it took them days, and they would hold this baby up with their trunks. And the other elephants were like, hey, we need water. We need our 200 liters. We need some more trees. And the mother and the sister, they rehabilitated this calf. They got it, moving and walking, and it, its leg unbent, and it could keep up with the herd. And, it's amazing. They're amazing creatures. And we owe it to them. I mean, we owe it to ourselves a little bit, but we really owe it to them. We share the planet with these magnificent other species, and we need to respect them.
Well, I feel that way about all creatures, but this elephant complexity is revealed in that story. So, are we out of time? What's our situation?
I think we are out of time. I think we've.
This is a sad way to end. No, we're out of time.
Well, I did have one other good news story, but we can
Thank you. That's kind of what I was getting at.
Oh, you want it? Okay. Good.
Well, quickly, I need it.
Okay, quickly.
Sadly.
Okay, so
sadly, it has to be quick.
Okay, Medellin, the second biggest city in Colombia, has urbanized at this really fast rate. And what was happening was they were overheating because they were getting these, terrible, urban heat islands that were trapping the heat with all the asphalt and concrete and not enough green spaces. And in 2016, they put up, and you're going to love this, Mark, a mere $16 million. And they said, we're going to take this $16 million and we're going to green our city. And to give you an idea about how awful heat islands are, it can make a city during the day 7 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than the rural areas around it, and 2 to 5 degrees hotter at night. And the reason why the story about Medellin is so important is that there are going to be 970 cities in the world. When is this date by? That by 2050, almost 1,000 cities are going to have their average summer high temperature is going to be 95 degrees Fahrenheit. So what Medellin has done is they've got 150 only amateur gardeners and basically people who didn't have jobs. They said, come, we will give you jobs. You'll plant trees. It'll be lovely. 15 forestry engineers. So these are the people who, said, yes, we need a job. Yes, we'd like to plant trees. They planted almost 1 million trees. The plants that they've planted, so they've got flowers, they've created ecosystems. They did research. They planted plants that would absorb pollution, particulate matter, because it's a city. And they put in all these bike lanes. They have since 2016, they've lowered the temperature of their city by 2 degrees. They have put in 70 hectares of green space. There's been a 34% increase in cycling. I mean, look how green it is. They've got these sides of buildings. A friend of mine was just there and he said it's unbelievable. Or, there's just green everywhere.
That's great. It's so dramatic. Look at it.
Yeah, it's super dramatic. But it's like, this is what people can do with a little bit of money. Imagine what we could do with all those trillions that go into oil subsidies if you gave that to us, to green our cities and to switch to renewables. But look what the people of Medellin did. It's really amazing, and they're cooling their city. They're making it a more livable green space, and of course, then you bring in nature, so it's a more beautiful city to live in because you're sharing it with the birds and the bees, and what a nice job this guy's got.
Yeah. The green corridors I saw, that's just that's a great story. And there's so many different ways that can be adopted, as you say, by major cities around the world. And communities around the world in general.
Yes, and plants aren't expensive. I mean, they're really our friends, and you create shade, and you create an ecosystem, and a tree holds water. I mean, there are just so many eco services that you get by planting plants, and not just the aesthetics of it, how nice it is to live in a green city.
Sure, those aesthetics actually spill over to psychology. It just feels better to be in a city with green there.
Yeah.
Very cool. Belinda, love our visits, and this one had just enough good news for me. So keep the good news coming.
It just has to be the right balance, right?
I wish it were all good. I'm a worrier, so I go to the stuff to worry about. But really, I really am encouraged, and my spirit uplifted by your good news.
I'm so
thank
glad.
you.
All right,
Belinda Waymouth, everybody. It's the Planet Stupid for today. Bye, Belinda.
More.
It's the planet stupid. No. It's the planet stupid.
Next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
I know. You want one more live shot. You've got it.
Mark's Madness.
It's day one of Mark's Madness. 2 drops going up against each other. There's the count. Sayonara Sucker is crushing We'll do it live. You'll vote, and you can continue to vote even as the show ends in the community section.
Sayonara, sucker.
Sayonara, sucker versus...
We'll do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live.
Again, it either is sayonara,
Sayonara, sucker. We'll do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live.
You can vote until midnight tonight, and good luck. Wow, this is very exciting. What a day. The first day of March Madness with the Commissioner, Albert, checking in from Taiwan.
Albert, thank you.
That was so cool. And many of you I know don't have brackets, but the great thing about March Madness is you can play. You don't have to have a bracket. You can just play along with the rest of us. Vote. So vote in the comments section and go for it. I can already tell you I will be losing this round. We'll do it live, beating Sayonara Sucker, and there's no way that's going to happen. And I blame you, Kim, because you say Sayonara Sucker all the time.
Kim, how are you?
And I thought it just was, I don't hear Kim if she's speaking, but anyway, Kim, I adore you.
I adore you. Woohoo!
And I am still counting on Chit 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 going deep. The after party live going down now.
For the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Thanks to all our supporters and you. Tomorrow, big day. Until then, bye-bye. Thanks from Indiana Animal Rescue. Big shout out.